Alright, so with the latest events of the My Hero Academia story, we've seemed to be on the precipice of its greatest change yet. It's official, the final act of the story has now begun, and Deku has left UA High School. For a series titled My Hero Academia, this is clearly an uprooting of virtually everything we've become accustomed to. Here on the channel, we've been speculating such a major move away from the academia aspect for a while now, and so to see it come to fruition is honestly a little bit bittersweet. However, this wouldn't be the first time that the series decided to go along a different path, as we did of course have the amazing My Villain Academia arc, a point of the story that is set to be covered with the upcoming season 5 of the anime. We focus upon the exploits of the infamous League of Villains rather than our usual cast of students. Albeit only over the span of 20 chapters, this was a major shift indeed that quite radically darkened the tone of the series and forebode even greater travesties to come, which we recently received with the War arc and are set to loom in its aftermath. Now, I know that for some fans of the series, this radical change and shift away from the main cast was a bit jarring, but I'm sure there are plenty of people like myself who rejoice in receiving such implications and narrative focus. And so with this video, perhaps we can speculate and prepare for what's to come together. Now, first and foremost, seeing as the current events of the story seem to have progressed 1 month forward, unfortunately, I don't imagine we'll be looking at any major time skips for the foreseeable future. As much as everyone wants to see a sort of My Hero Shippuden, I believe there are too many pressing matters in the present to afford such a leap. The Todoroki family, along with the assistance of Hawks and Best Jeanist, have solemnly vowed to stop Dabi together. A feat I highly doubt would take the top 3 ranking heroes years to accomplish with such levels of conviction, especially considering that after having watched their press conference, Dabi is liable to make an even greater stir to truly break his father's spirit. Furthermore, the country is in shambles and in a constant state of anarchy. Much needs to be done in the here and now with this in mind. Not to mention the fact that Shigaraki's slumber, albeit devoid of a definite timeline, isn't something I imagine will take all too long to accomplish with the overview of All for One. So if we're not skipping too far ahead, what are we doing in the present, and what exactly may have transpired in the last month? Well, by the looks of it, it would appear that Deku did manage to heed the words of Shimura Nana upon waking up, giving her regards to Gran Torino, seeing as he now possesses his tattered cape. And at that, Gran Torino's hero career has more than likely come to a close, following the damage he sustained while facing Shigaraki, as Deku now bears his former cloak as a sort of memento. With this being said, I can't imagine All Might or Gran Torino co-signing this solitary trek of Deku's. The generational battle against All for One has been an exceedingly arduous one for the many wielders of One for All. But even they have been able to confide in certain individuals, such as Gran Torino. So Deku going off by his lonesome, even with the guidance of the past wielders, is bizarre. But from the perspective of Deku, this is all for the sake of keeping everyone else out of harm's way. A sort of misguided chivalry, as in reality, he is not the only one with a hero's heart. Plenty of his classmates would be more than willing to charge into the lion's den with him, something perhaps he does know, but only serves to further cement his protective stance. But even with this being the case, his friends are most certainly going to chase him down and support him whether he likes it or not. But more than just them, I believe Deku will find himself being aided by those he may have once called his enemies, the likes of Stain, Overhaul, and Toga. This is admittedly a bit of a crazy theory, I'm sure, but by now, I hope that most of you have learned not to doubt even our most radical of summations. First, let's talk about Stain. Now, Stain the Hero Killer was dubbed as such on account of his vanquishing of heroes he considered to be the antithesis of true heroics. A truly remarkable antagonist that, despite possessing an incredibly radical stance, certainly did have a point that could be recognized not only by us as viewers, but even the very characters of the series. And as we now know, Stain too has been freed into this hellish world. And in this world, the corrupt establishment of heroics has all but been destroyed. And based on the rhetoric Dabi had been following, this current world is the fulfillment of Stain's will. But lest we forget, Stain, despite being a murderer, is very passionate about the protection and furtherance of true heroes, something he has recognized Deku to be. At this point, any former hero stepping back into the fray may be considered as such, and so from here on, I don't believe Stain will be adverse to the proceedings of our main cast, but rather in full support. In the case of Overhaul, like Stain, albeit a monster, did base his proceedings in genuine points of concern, particularly the impact of quirks upon human society and what is proposed to be the downfall and end of the species. The quirk singularity is a real problem that only continues to surmount. And for all his sins, it is undeniable that Overhaul is in fact a genius. Without the use of his arms and by extension his quirk and the suppression of his influence, he is virtually powerless. We have seen him freed from Tartarus in what appears to be somewhat of a mentally deranged state. The guilt of his folly and betrayal of his boss now haunt him. Now being in his current state, the only person who could possibly undo what he has done is Eri, the very child he so horribly mistreated and abused. Overhaul's mind is the only asset he still possesses, and so where he's set to go from here will be interesting. But at the very least, I don't imagine he'll be much of an enemy going forwards either. Lastly, we have Himiko Toga. Now Toga is a villain that has largely been shunned by society due to the unsavory nature of her quirk. This is a character that possesses feelings for Deku and certainly longs to meet with him again. This being the case following the death of her beloved friend twice at the hands of the heroes. Now personally, seeing the destruction they have evoked across several cities and that which she herself has personally committed, I fail to sympathize with her plight entirely. And don't get me wrong, I thought Twice was great, but even he was a mass murderer and notorious thief, regardless of his playful nature. This is a man that lost his parents to a villain attack and yet proceeded to be complicit and even participate in the enactment of such violence upon others. Toga sought the stance of Uraraka and was heartbroken by it, yet prior, she also expressed an interest in Deku's feelings on the matter, and so with her currently on the run as well and away from the league, I imagine she'll have the opportunity to present her question to Deku as well once she finds him out and about. And considering how he felt in regards to Shigaraki's situation, he's likely to give her the sort of considerate response that she is looking for. And so with all of this, with these three cases, I feel like we may be able to call back to the conversation Deku had with the past users in regards to understanding his enemies and finding a better way. And hey, such hands-on experience could serve to better prepare him for the madness of Shigaraki even. And on the note of villains, something else we can expect to see with the final act would be an introduction and elaboration of new characters. For instance, the new female villain that was detained in Tartarus and was largely responsible for the release of all others on the premises. We know next to nothing about her, but that's liable to change in due time. And past that, with this in fact being the final act of the story, Horikoshi has in the past promised us the eventual introduction and reveal of Deku's father, so yeah, I guess there's that. Not exactly sure what role he'll serve to play, but we've yet to get it. And somehow we've still yet to have the reveal of the UA traitor, so here's hoping we can eventually put an end to that mystery once and for all, as at this point, it's hard not to feel like it's been outright forgotten entirely. With Deku now being out and about in the field by his lonesome for the time being, I'm picturing a bit of crime fighting reminiscent of various Western comic stories, as over time, he further grows into the power, just as Shigaraki simultaneously grows into his, until everything culminates into an epic clash beyond anything we have ever seen before. Now, with all this being said however, I would like to emphasize the difference between a final act and a final arc. This is a final act of the series, an act being indicative of a beginning, middle, and end. And so yes, we are now getting into the general end, but that does not necessarily mean we are at the very end of the story. Personally, I'd say that the end of All Might's career signified the end of the first act of the story, which was around the first 100 chapters of the story, thus making the second act a whopping 200 chapters. So for those of you concerned with the end being near, hopefully you can rest assured knowing that that is hardly the case. So to me, at the bare minimum, we are looking at another 2 years of My Hero Academia manga, which we've expressed in the past on more than one occasion. All in all, I'm really looking forward to everything that's to come. As for me right now, the story feels like it just keeps getting better and better. And at that, I have to thank you all for the absolutely unreal support you have continued to show to us. Unfortunately, we got hit with a series of false copyright strikes just recently, but as opposed to our horrible situation last year that took us out of commission for 4 entire months, we are remaining pretty optimistic that things will be alright. At the end of the day, with the plot army behind us, we are pretty much infallible. I mean, on Friday, we were at 198,000 subscribers, on the verge of hitting 200,000 subscribers. And by the end of the weekend, you guys took us to 208,000. And so if you want to be a part of one of the craziest runs this community has ever seen, then I suggest you subscribe to Plot Armor with notifications on, because ultimately, we are only in the first act of our journey. Beyond that, to keep up with every bit of news related to the channel and anime and manga in general, go ahead and follow us at PlotArmorYT over on Twitter and Instagram. A number of you have even decided to support us over on Patreon as well, so thank you for appreciating what we do, because when it comes to bringing you some of the best My Hero Academia content on the platform, Plot Armor has you covered. As always, I'm Sliceable Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.